This video is brought to you by Skillshare. More about them later in the video. Structural engineering isn't an easy career, and it means you both have to have technical and soft skills combined to be the best engineer that you can be. And unfortunately, as you track through your career, what you need to focus on changes dramatically. So how do you know what you need to focus on at which levels? And how do you know if you've actually missed something in the past? Because if you've missed some of those key steps, maybe it's holding you back from progressing to the next level. So I'll go through all the things that you need to focus on from graduate all the way through to director and what you should be focusing on each level. My name's Brendan, your structural engineer. Now let's get into it. Now let's just start off at the beginning. Now this is graduate level, which is somewhere between 0 to 4.5 years, depending on which organization you're in. This is the time that you need to be building the foundation in engineering skill sets. I know it's quite often hard to hear, but you don't want to be chasing the money, especially early on in your career. You want to be going to someone that is offering you the additional learning that you need. The quicker you learn, the quicker you get better. You'll outshine all of your colleagues, people, and in the end, the money will come as you're essentially being so good that they can't fire you. So you want to be the best at what you're currently doing. So this is where you should be focusing on learning how to draw drawings, learning how to design buildings, learning some of those rules of thumb. So how big do columns need to be? Span to depth ratios. If we're in amongst the forest and we start to come out of the trees, it's really hard to see what we don't know. So this is the area where you're trying to learn your blind spots and constantly improving. And as you're constantly improving, you are going to make mistakes. Now, you see, that is a good thing. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. It's something that doesn't really get taught at universities. You're typically penalized for making mistakes. Provided you make a mistake in a safe way, in a controlled environment, it's the only way you're going to improve. As if you don't make mistakes, you're not pushing the boundaries enough. You also need to be focusing on proficiencies in using software. Software is going to be key to being an efficient engineer, but you also need to making sure that you can do quick analysis and breaking down more complex systems into simpler systems so that you can analyze them effectively and even have quick hand assessments so that you know the results that are coming out of that software are correct. So not only do you need to know how to use that software efficiently and correctly to making sure that you've made no mistakes in the inputs, but you also need to make sure that you've done the correct hands assessment so you know what answers you're roughly trying to get, so you know if the results are incorrect. Now, just because they're different from your hand assessment doesn't always mean they're incorrect either, as sometimes you may have made a wrong assumption in your hand assessment, but it's just a good way to back up and double check which one is incorrect or which one is right. And if they align, you still need to be looking for patterns, as patterns is the best way to find errors in your work. And a lot of time you should value the feedback that you get. Even negative feedback, it's a way to work out things that you need to improve and become better at. Another thing that you should be doing is keeping track of the type of projects that you've been working on to try and get a broad range of experience. As typically engineering, especially structural engineering, there's many different projects and many different aspects that you need to know. So making sure that you're focusing on all the different aspects that you need to look at to making sure that you're improving in different areas. It's not up to your manager to make sure that you've got the variety of experiences. It's up to you to keep track of that work and constantly expanding your repertoire. And sometimes if you haven't got experience in some areas, it's about speaking to your manager and saying, how can I get experience in these areas? But just making sure that you're getting a broad range of experiences to make you a better engineer, all-rounded. So when you're getting on different projects, you can apply the broad range of knowledge that you've gained. Now we're going to move into project engineer. Now, project engineer is somewhere between 4 to 5 to 7 years, depending on where you're working on and how quickly you progress. But this is the level just after graduate engineer. So you're getting a little bit more responsibility. You may be starting to run smaller projects, which is really enjoyable. This is where you need to start focusing on interaction with stakeholders and those solid communication skills at this point. As now you're starting to communicate with a lot of variety of different people. So you're starting to communicate with the builders, you're starting to communicate with architects and other engineers, and making sure you're targeting it for their correct level of understanding. It's all about understanding the problems that they're having and phrasing it and putting it in such a way that solves their problems as well. As if you can go through and understand the problems that they're having, you can come up with better solutions that helps both the project and yourself and their issues as well. Now, you sort of started to have a solid founding in the different codes you need to look at, how you can design and assess for other things, and the type of things that you need to assess in the codes and how you can apply them and making sure your designs are code compliant. Your technical skills should be getting to the point people can just hand stuff off to you and means that your technical skills are up there. It doesn't mean that you should be lazy and misstep anywhere. This is where you're getting more responsibility and people are expecting you just to understand and give you a little bit more freedom in your designs. You also get to understand project budgets and what that actually means for different areas. So making sure that your budgets are on time. It's not something that we specifically try and seek out as engineers. However, if we don't make money, we don't have a job. So it's something that is important as you progress, is understanding project budgets and how your time affects the viability and profitability of different projects. And gaining site knowledge is something that I would recommend any project or design engineer focus on at this point. Site is invaluable. You see, now you've got to the point where you can actually understand the drawings. You can read them, you can put them together, but actually understanding about how it goes together and learning some of the problems that you had in your designs to make it easier in the future. Site is an invaluable asset, and being a site engineer for a couple of years is definitely valuable to your career at this point, as you're able to bring your design knowledge to hand and understand it in the real world and how it comes together. You'll also be able to see the problems that the builders have on site, putting together those complex designs so that you can improve your designs in your future, to making it easier for them to build, meaning there's less likely that they are to make a mistake. So this is really invaluable at this point, is the fact that you're trying to focus on more site visits, more site work, or even being a site engineer for a specific set of time to see a whole building go from start to finish. It really helps you progress your career in the future and making your relationships with builders better in the long run. Now we're getting into senior levels. This is where you're starting to run projects more often. You may have a small team underneath you where you're overseeing some project engineers and graduate engineers. So you need to start focusing on your leadership skills and management skills and how you can interact with different colleagues and making sure that things are getting done on time. So this can be quite a little bit of a different shift, as at this point, as a senior engineer, you're going to be focusing on hard numbers. You're going to be doing a lot of the results as people are more confident in your technical skills. There's very little oversight potentially at this point. Now, people still check your work, but they're more going to expect that the work is done correctly and you've double checked your results. So a lot of the hard work, a lot of the project design is done at this level. And as you are running teams, it's about managing those teams and making sure you're spending both time in the design and enough time for the people that are working underneath you to making sure that they understand things correctly. So it's really about time management at this point and making sure that you're doing enough work. At this point, there probably is a little bit of long hours as you have mixed responsibilities as you are running projects on your project management skills as well. So that's time management, making sure you're hitting to schedules, managing clients' expectations. So if they do set an unreasonable expectation, speaking up, making sure project budgets are met and scope creep doesn't occur. There's a lot of killer to a lot of projects is that scope creep where you're doing work for free. So making sure you're understanding what's in your contract, what is actually expected to be delivered, and where those different, and making sure the client understands is when they go beyond that, what additional charges they will have. As potentially what happens in a lot of projects that I see is the fact that people do not have the correct project management skills. They don't speak up early enough. And when the project starts to lose money, they then start charging those extra costs. And it's something that is quite shocking to the builder or client, saying, why are you charging this now? This was something you were previously doing for free. Where if you speak up earlier, they'll clearly understand that these are variations, even if you're not going to charge it at this point. But at least letting them know, potentially after these get built up, there may be variations required, as there's only so much that you can absorb in the project cost. And at this point, you should really start be building your personal brand, both inside and outside of your organization. Your personal brand is going to be invaluable to you in the future. So what does personal brand need to be? It doesn't need to be like I'm doing here in front of this screen. Yes, this is building my personal brand. Personal branding can just be about how you hold yourself, how you work professionally, and the advice and the morals that you stand up for. So this is about building up who you are and making sure that you're producing work that you would be proud of. So every time you're dealing with a client, builder, or architect, how do you interact with them and how can you make their life easier? Personal branding is not something that really comes naturally to us. It does to some, but not many. And it will help you out. So if you've got technical excellence, standing up for that technical excellence and explaining to people why things need to be a certain way. Treating people like real people is something that they may see really valuable and love working with you in the future. Thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video. See, us as engineers, we're constant lifelong learners. And Skillshare offers a premium online learning community that offers premium content that is ad-free and is also updated on a regular basis. Not only do they offer some of those benefits from those soft skills that I may have talked in previous integrations, but they also have a lot of hard skills that you can benefit from as well. So if you're trying to learn how to use eTabs, there's courses there for you. If you need to learn more of those hard documentation skills like how to document your drawings, no one can go past Bluebeam. And there's a beginner's guide course from Liz Rowe, so you can go from beginner to an advanced user, meaning that you can utilize the power of such programs. There's also many courses in learning Revit or AutoCAD, depending on what aspects that you need to learn. Now, these content is updated on a regular basis, giving you many opportunities to learn from. And there's an amazing course about prompting ChatGPT to get the answers out that you need.
Then I let the AI know that the goal as your goal as a specialist. So that's their task or their goal, that's their objective, that's what you're giving the AI. And
Skillshare has something to offer to my listeners. So the first 1,000 people to click the link in my below description will get a 1-month free trial on Skillshare. So you can try it out and see the benefits that Skillshare has to offer. So I hope to see you over there. Now let's get back to the content. Now this is where we get into a number of different titles for this type of role. This is between 10 to 14 to 15 years, depending on where you are. This is like engineering manager, team lead, associate, and then principal engineer, depending on what company you are. There's very many different titles for this type of level. Now, this is where you start in a more strategic thinking. Like, what type of areas are you going to be focusing on? How can you improve your technical skills within your organization? How can you help shape to make sure that your company is on the right direction? What type of areas are they going to target? Are we going to do residential? Are we going to do commercial? Are we going to do infrastructure? How are we going to build the relationships to making sure that we're bringing in that next job? So you're getting more involved in the technical aspects and the decision making of the organization and pushing the organization to be better. You may even be bringing in a lot of new work from those relationships that you've built in the past. Now, relationships are not just with clients as well, but they can also be with builders. So sometimes you might have a joint bid where you're bidding for a project both with the engineer and builder hand in hand to win those bigger projects. You're definitely looking at being more of a manager and team lead. You've got a small division of people underneath you that you're looking to look after. So making sure that you're giving effective feedback. Sometimes you may not want to mention it as feedback can be seen quite negative, but it's about giving advice is the better term. You should also be trying to seek out advice, as a lot of people won't get the feedback that they need around their colleagues or the people underneath them, as people don't like giving feedback. So asking the correct people for some advice to making sure that you're becoming better. It's all about constant improvement to making sure that you're outshining everyone around you. Another hard thing that potentially is a big shift here is becoming more of a mentor or a coach to the colleagues around you. So coaching people in the different design aspects, learning how different people learn and communicate to making sure that you're giving them the advice that they need on a timely manner in a way that will be receptive to them. So coaching is something that is potentially different. Some of us have it, some of us don't. But it's something that all of us need to build. As if you are running a team, you need to making sure that you're coaching the people underneath you in the correct way so that they can be the best that they can be. It's something that you should also be focused on is making sure that you're constantly trying to get rid of your job, training people up to be better than you can be, as this makes truly the best manager and makes the strongest teams. It's constantly trying to train people up so they can outcompete you. This also keeps you on your toes, as you need to making sure that you're constantly improving as well, pushing the organization further. The more stronger your team becomes and the better you get at delivering projects, they'll start to ask more questions and wondering how can they do that in their teams as well. You should also, at this point, also starting to become more of an industry leader as well. So making sure that you're up to date with the latest knowledge and potentially even presenting at things like Engineers Australia and other places. It's something that can be quite hard and it's not necessarily for everyone. But for people that enjoy it, it's definitely something that will improve your career, make you more sellable. And if you do need to leave for another company, it makes you more employable and potentially get better job offers. Now, beyond this level, so somewhere between 12, 14, 15 years is when this potentially starts, but this is potentially to the end of your career. Now, it's not really the end, as there's many different streams and many different things you need to focus on. This is where you either become the principal, engineering director, technical director, associate director, but there's many different roles and titles in this position. And you can even move up to regional director, state director, national director, each of them having very different skill sets that you need to focus on. But at this point, there is now 3 distinct streams of leadership that you move into. Now, you are being a leader within your organization, company, and wherever you work. Now, this is either just generic leadership, making sure the team is being the best that it can be. Technical leadership, making sure that your engineering knowledge is as good as it needs to be and going in the right direction and staying up to date with the latest knowledge and changes that are happening within the code, industry, and the world. And third is lead generation, which is winning that next work, bringing the money in the door to making sure that everyone has the work that they need to work on. Now, let's start with more of a technical term, which is the leadership term, which is more of a little bit generic, and it's about how you lead teams and how you're making sure that the managers underneath you are leading the teams effectively. So it's about setting the right direction, people understanding how to manage their teams and giving the correct mentorship and advice, making sure that they're leading in the right direction. Now, it can be quite contradictory at this point as you're trying to manage both staff, technical aspects, and also the money that's coming in and how you can earn the next money and generating value for the company as a whole. The next one is very similar to leadership, but it's more focused on the technical aspect. Now, this is technical leadership. So it's focusing on the actual hard skills of engineering. If there is a hard project, you're the one that gets called in to try and solve that project. So what issues are they having and how can you guide the people that are working on it or even do the work yourself? So it's making sure that you're maintaining your highest level of knowledge. So these are people that love engineering. They're just focusing on the hard skills and the hard numbers. They just love doing the numbers and understanding the structural mechanics behind it. At this point, also need to be focusing on potentially presentations, building the reputation of your company. So presenting at things like Engineers Australia, Concrete Institute, or other organizations within your industry, making sure that you're building the skill set to show that what engineering we have to offer and how we are good. Also building that knowledge that people understand the technical aspects that you have, as that will potentially bring on the next people into your organization, making sure that you're attracting the best talent that they have possible. So at this point, you're building the whole vision on what the company has to offer in the technical aspect and in the engineering community. This will lead to you not only having the hardest projects and people will come to you to solve these problems, which is highly valuable, but also attracting the best staff, as they always want to be trying to be at the company that's trying to push the boundaries and being the best engineering firm possible. As most of the time, building those technical skills, people only ever see the negative side effects. When something goes well, it's just expected. When something doesn't go well, it is seared into their mind and it'll be hard for them to win that next project. So you're only as good as your last project. So building those technical skills and making sure that you're offering value on time with high caliber and good engineering knowledge. The last one is lead generation. Now you may be thinking, I'm not a marketer. I don't try and sell myself. What does lead generation have to do with engineering? However, you're only as good as how much work you can bring in. If you can't bring in work, you can't do those more fancier projects. You can't even be an engineer, as you need to be constantly bringing in work. So lead generation is extremely important. It's something that we can't live without. And for the select few that want to go down this stream, it's highly valuable and you should praise them for the amount of effort and what they actually do to bring in that next job. So at this point, it's about building up that relationship, potentially dealing with complaints from clients about things that they've had in the past and building the relationships up within the community so people can have confidence to come back to you and actually say, look, we're having an issue here. Can you help improvement? Sometimes it may be just the client complaining. And so you need to have a good way of explaining to them what the issues are and why they actually occurred. But also building those relationships, making sure that you're bringing in the next job and having a finger on the pulse on how much things actually cost and what's the next project to come out. Now, we just talked about 3 potential streams. However, a lot of the time it's a little bit of a colored triangle here, as you're not necessarily only one of these things. You can't be all 3. No one's ever good as a jack of all trades. But this is where you need to work out what you enjoy and what you need to focus on. Now, you will need a little bit of everything here. However, you need to work out which 2 ones you want to focus on the most. Now, you may be more towards technical, you may be more towards leadership, but being somewhere along the lines in those areas means that you can perform the best that you can for the organization that you're working for. And as a director, it's very much changing the relationship of how you've actually been building in the past. You do need to be great to be a great leader. You do need to be vulnerable to some extent and be cognizant of where your downfalls are and making yourself into a better person. No one really likes to do that, but this is really what you need to focus on, as no one is ever perfect. And the only way you're going to improve is by understanding where your downfalls are to make yourself into a better manager. And a lot of the time, you do need to somewhat hold the company line. So if the company said something, and this is the direction they want to go, it's about holding that line It doesn't mean blindly follow, as sometimes it can be the wrong direction, but making sure that you speak up, but making sure you're speaking up in the correct environment and not making it disperse between the whole community about what other people understand. So sometimes when your manager is standing strong for some reason, you may be thinking about why is he doing that? What is the understanding? But it doesn't mean that they're not speaking up in the background. And sometimes you do need to understand and sit down with your colleagues and discuss with them the issues that they're having, even if they're on junior level, and understanding the true issues that are occurring. And one of the biggest things you need to do is making sure that you're focusing on your team. It's about progressing your team and making them better than you are. That's something that you should always be focusing on. And one of the biggest issues that people don't realize is the fact that everything you do, say, communicate is being broadcast on a giant megaphone. So everyone is hearing what you're saying and sinking in. So it's like you're shouting from the rooftop. So every bit of communication needs to be tailored, and you need to think about how you're actually saying it and how it can potentially affect other people. And it'll also be scrutinized under the microscope. So it doesn't matter who you're interacting with, whether it's a one-on-one or in a big group, making sure that every bit of interaction you would be happy to promote to the wider team. This is just some of the areas that you should focus on. But there's one thing that potentially you didn't know about that will make you into a better engineer, making your designs better. And I'll link the video up here to help improve your engineering skills. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, there's two ways that you can do this. You can either become a YouTube or Patreon member. Without the support of them, this type of content would not be to the level that it is. So I thank them for all their support. And as always, I hope you enjoy, and I hope to see you next week.